Well, we're beginning that slow slide into winter. Looking pretty clear outside right now, though, and pretty nice sunset. Days are getting a lot shorter as we head into fall here. Okay, we should go ahead and take a look at the tropical map. That's usually our first stop when it gets to be September and October, because the ocean temperatures are so warm this time of year. They are starting to come down a little bit now, but we still have a little bit of potential for tropical activity from now even into November, and it's really only in late November that the risk starts subsiding a bit. Leslie is still wandering around out in the Pacific, or in the Atlantic, big difference there. However, we're going to be watching this system here in the Caribbean. It's expected to head north as the week goes on, and it's going to hit the Gulf sometime around the weekend into early next week, and we may see a tropical system coming together in that region. Looking around the U.S. This evening, we'll look at the SPC chart. It's a good depiction of current weather there. Some nice tools. I don't know if any of you have been on this site, but it's at spc.noaa.gov/exper. And there's all these different fields you can plot. And I will caution you that this is output from the rapid refresh model, so it's not exactly observed. And you're not really going to have developments in the past hour showing up in these models, but it's still pretty useful. And down in Pennsylvania, we can see a lot of thunderstorm activity, all the way from Scranton across State College and back to Pittsburgh, and also some storms around Connecticut and Rhode Island there. So what's causing that? We can plot that, and it's not a great plot. Maybe I can bring up digital atmosphere and we can look at it that way. That's probably a little bit more legible there on the internet stream. And there we've got a 10-15 millibar low up there around Syracuse, and down to the south a lot of humid air across New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia. You can see those dew points there are around 68 to about 68 is about as high as I see there. Kind of a light southerly flow there, and I can see a little bit of north wind there in Pennsylvania. So there's some outflow boundaries in that area. It's a very rich environment. Looking at the big picture, we also see the Bermuda High still parked across the southeastern U.S. and bringing that southeasterly flow into Texas and Louisiana and up into the southern plains. The polar fronts are making more progress further and further south by the week, and we've had it pretty much sitting in Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska the past week or so, showing up as kind of a quasi-stationary weak warm front lifting north, and then we've got a fresh incursion of polar air coming out of Canada. And you can see some very cold temperatures there, 32 to all the way down to 28 around Calgary, and we can see that they're down to 3/4 of a mile in snow around Calgary. So yeah, it looks like winter is starting kind of early, and they've had snowfalls back in September. I think there was at least 2 events around the Edmonton area a couple weeks ago. And then down to the south, a big change you can see in the deserts of Washington and Oregon. Strong westerly flow. This is a lee side flow coming across the Cascades there. Very dry, gusty winds there, and just to the north there's that frontal boundary. All right, let me check the stream, make sure everything's looking good. Good, no dropped frames. Take a look at chat, and pretty good crowd there. I did want to show you a little bit of, I don't know how many of you are familiar with weather graphics. Before I get into that, let me just check and make sure that the audio is okay. No complaints. All right, yeah, let's go ahead and bring this up, and I was just kind of messing around with this. I haven't fired up weather graphics in over a decade, so I decided to see how that would do. Let me get that centered there. This was one of the first weather programs I actually sold back in the 90s, and it was written in Turbo Pascal, and I'll give you a look at the files there. Okay, well, I guess I can't pause the output, but anyway, we'll just go ahead and start it up. I've got current data loaded in there. And there it is, importing the data. Let me get that centered a little bit. So yes, it does work with current observations, and we'll take a look at that once it finishes importing. So it bears some resemblance to AFOS, which is the old Weather Service computer workstation system. And depending on how much data is in there, you could be waiting a while, but should be finishing up here, and we'll take a look at the plots. So everything is driven by this menu down here at the bottom. It's kind of weird seeing that 2018 down there at the bottom. Okay, so data plots. We'll go to filter plot. And there's the observations coming up, and this is all current. You can see that 86 there in the DFW area. And I can see looks like 60 around the Chicago area. Let me get my cursor back. Yeah, there we go. So the last plots are finally coming up. So this is how you would go about looking at data back in the 90s. If you're at home or at a weather office somewhere, it would look kind of like that there. And yeah, there's that snow up there in Alberta. And once it finishes up, we're going to take a look at the contours. That's going to be that menu right here. And maybe I should clear the menu first. Let me go to Clean Map. And then we'll try Contour. And we'll try sea level pressure and see what that looks like. So this is a little bit of a retro blast from the past here. And we can see all that low pressure there in the northern Rockies. And we'll just put up, I guess, maybe potential temperature. Look at the air mass contrast, and we should be able to find that front up there in Montana. Yeah, that's showing up pretty well up there. Bit of a potential temperature gradient in that area. And more surprisingly, a potential temperature gradient there in northern Kansas near Interstate 70. Let me draw that out here. So that's definitely going to be a front right there. And then the other front is up to the north, up in this area here. And could be something there in New Mexico, but very likely we're just seeing maybe some of the, I don't know. I'll have to look at some more data to know that for sure. Anyway, let's check out some of the other menus in here very quick before we move on. I forgot all these old menus. There's Generate. Okay, Wind Grid. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can get your futuristic gridded wind field. And that comes up. I mean, this was certainly great stuff back in the 90s. We don't have radar data up. Can request observation and see what that looks like. We'll look at Chicago. And it looks like it shows that down at the bottom there. Overlay, forgot about these. I guess you can put up your counties and stuff like that. Program, I guess that's program options there. And you can also look at upper level data in that program, and we can do a manual zoom. Give that a try. Let's look at Montana. GTF, and we're going to do 500 miles maybe. Okay, didn't like that there. Let me try one more time. Okay, so it's coming up with a plot. This looks pretty zoomed in there. And then we can just put up the data plots there. And we can see those north winds around Cut Bank and Browning, Great Falls, and Billings, and snow up to the north. Anyway, that's weather graphics. I thought it'd be kind of neat to fire that up there and see what things look like with these old programs. Anyway, we've got definitely better stuff like this. The code is a lot more efficient in the newer programs like Digital Atmosphere, so we can bring the charts up a lot quicker. Anyway, we'll take a look up to the north and see what things are looking like in the polar regions. Definitely pretty active up there across Canada. Lots of north winds, and we're bringing another incursion of polar air southward, and temperatures are below 20 up in the high Arctic there. Looks like it's a little warm in Alaska. You can see temperatures up in the 50s in a lot of these areas here. So we're going to expect to find a lot of troughing in this area right here, and likely quite a bit of ridging right around in that area. Looks like 62 right there north of Nome. Okay. So looking at the upper level charts, here's what things look like this evening. Big polar vortex continues, centered around Baker Lake to Coral Harbor there. A very strong trough coming down through Prince George into the British Columbia coast right there. So that's going to be heading southeast. Likely the weather is going to deteriorate further in that region right there. And just to make things even more interesting, we've got a deep low off the California coast. There it is right there, bringing strong 90-knot winds aloft into California there. So it looks like we do have support here for maybe a frontal system along the California coast. Often I talk about that relationship between troughs and ridges. See, here's a embedded ridge right there in Nevada, in Arizona. And then back here is a trough. So the jet is running something like that right there. The surface low is going to be right near that inflection point between the cyclonic flow out to the west and the anticyclonic flow in the California proper there. So yeah, this is a baroclinic low. Very likely it's going to be right here on the surface charts, and probably a cold front extending southward kind of like that, and maybe some support for a warm front, because it's assumed that there's a warm air advection associated with that warm front, and that's helping to build the ridge right there. That ridge is not there for no reason at all. There's likely very warm air or warm advection in that part of the southwest. So we're going to look for this on the surface charts there. Let's go ahead and pull that up right now and see if that shows up. And indeed, yeah, we do find something off the California coast. I might be going something like that right there with the front. And let's see, yeah, that's probably about all we can do there. But we can see the gusty southerly winds there in the California deserts, 84 there in Vegas, and it looks like maybe a little bit of cool outflow there at Tonopah and Austin, Nevada. Okay, continuing on with the charts. We'll look at the 850 chart real quick to assess the moisture. And we do see southerly winds in Texas there. So we're bringing up, looks like 13 dew points. That's 50-degree temperatures up at 5,000 feet. And a kind of a weak low-level jet in West Texas all the way up into Kansas. And let's see. Let me see if there's anything else showing up aloft. I'm looking for any evidence of subtropical jets. This all looks like, I'm looking at the 500 millibar chart here, and this looks like a reflection of the polar jet right there. So going up to 250, I don't find things a whole lot different. Maybe a little bit of fast flow from Arizona to Kansas. That could be a little bit of subtropical jet energy there. So what I'm trying to show you is, let me get this centered here. The main polar front jet, looking at this 250 millibar chart, looks to be about right there, and I think maybe there's kind of a separate subtropical jet running something like that there. A little bit of coupling between those two jets. And yeah, up to the north, there comes 120 knots right there. That's a lot faster than the flow immediately ahead of the trough, so that will likely go ahead and dig that trough southeastward into Washington. So a lot going on this evening. Thickness and isobars, what those look like right now. There's our warm front right there in Nebraska. Looks like a bit of an inverted trough in North Dakota up to Manitoba. I might actually draw that as part of that Arctic system up in that region, and this I might handle separately as a kind of a Pacific frontal system like that. Anyway, you can see the influence of what's exists of the Bermuda High right there in the outgoing polar air. They're kind of joined together there, and the result is kind of a deep southerly fetch into Texas like that. Anyway, yeah, the air mass pretty cold up there in Canada. This is all cold air in that region, and we can see some of the thermal ridging across Alaska right there. We got 540 to 546 decameters in that area, and we'll check out that ridge on the GFS shortly. All right, satellite. Let's go through those charts. We're going to be starting to use these infrared charts since the days are getting shorter. Pretty soon we're not going to be able to use much of the visible charts at broadcast time, so we need to get used to these. So, running this back, we can see what looks like a little bit of upper energy going across the northern plains right there. Typically, when we have organized regions of cold upper-level temperatures like what you see in this area, that's all extensive cirriform, there's probably something driving that, probably some upper-level trough. So I might look for maybe some troughing in that area right there. Also, yeah, it looks like this whole area, that looks like some high relative humidity is aloft, maybe a bit of that Pineapple Express coming northward. And looks like a little bit of lee-side cirrus there in Nevada. So that's a little bit of mountain wave activity in that area. We'll flip over to the visible imagery. Actually, you know, I think that I didn't look at the charts yesterday, but I think that may be some of the outgoing energy from Rosa, which crossed Nevada a couple days ago, crossed Arizona and Utah. So, yeah, there's some residual moisture in that area, and we can zoom in on that. Head down to the southwestern U.S., and lots of cloud cover in that region. So, yeah, you can definitely see that there. So let me just take a quick look at the surface chart and kind of put that together. I can see the temperatures in that area. They're kind of on the mild side. They're not too cool, so that's very likely a lot of debris from that outgoing system. And let's see. Let's take a look up north. Lots of activity up there in the Pacific Northwest. Remember, we had that downslope flow coming off the Cascades there. And somewhere in here, we've got that polar system that's set up across Montana and northern Washington. And down below that, snow. All right, a lot of ground to cover. Let's look at the north U.S., north central there. You can see some stratocumulus covering this entire area. That's probably cold air advection. Got kind of a cool high covering that area, surface flow doing something like that there. And it's probably a combination of that, maybe a little bit of overrunning on top of that cold dome there. Down in Texas, pretty quiet, and the sea breeze has been active. A couple storms there around the Houston area. But we've cleared off pretty good today. So it looks like we're probably under the influence of maybe a little bit of ridging. Okay, the southeastern U.S. Easterly flow there in Florida. Looks like a little bit of sea breeze activity has come together in that region. Other than that, looks like things are pretty much driven by ridging at the large scale. So pretty quiet in that area. And then, of course, in Pennsylvania, where we have all those storms going. Yeah, there they are. There's what looks like a fast-moving cold front. And it looks like some cells out ahead of that. Kind of a little resemblance there to May of '85 when they had that storm outbreak in that same region. And as we lose the sunlight, we can catch some of those overshoots in the Pittsburgh area back to Ohio. And that's all we have of that. So let's see what's going to happen over the next few days. These charts are getting more and more interesting. I mean, just starting out there, there's a lot happening. There's a very strong troughing, this very intense trough right there around the Vancouver area. Big cutoff high across northern Alaska there. That's keeping things kind of warm in that region. And we've got this Polar Express thing going on in the Western Canadian region. And, of course, our little trough off the California coast. All right, let me just drop in on chat real quick and see how things are going tonight. Got David Lumbert there in Arkansas, 84 over 71. Sue M. reporting 80 degrees there in Indiana. Erica Baker in Kansas reporting 82 over 68. JT has got the Weather Map Handbook. Good deal there. Got Ryan Toomey's here, and JT ordered, oh yeah, Stanley Gedzelman's Science and Wonders of the Atmosphere. Yeah, that's a book from 1980. It's very well done. It's probably a little bit dated, but it's very, very readable. Ryan Toomey is reporting 92 there in South Florida. JT reporting 59 in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Got Carl Burkhoff here, and Ryan Toomey is mentioning the outbreak going on there in Pennsylvania. And hello to Funwood Tech and Andrew Hotchkiss, Alexei Pinkson-Walsh, Adam Davis, Mike Estwick there reporting 76 in Denver. Carl Berghoff mentioning severe weather expected in Wisconsin. Fast-moving supercells are possible tomorrow. Andrew Hotchkiss mentioning north of Pittsburgh, south of Erie, had several tornado warnings. I forgot to bring up that product. I can show you the tornado reports. Yeah, there they are right there. Those red dots right there, western Pennsylvania, those are the tornado reports, and a little bit of wind damage also reported. And we'll just bring up the listing real quick. There's the 3 tornadoes. Those are going to be earlier this afternoon. Confirmed tornado near Connetville. Graysville reporting video on social media. Flying debris. And then Baxter, Pennsylvania. Call from 911 of tornado on the ground. Looks like nothing being listed here after about 5 p.m. Okay, Sue Laporte out there in southern Ontario, getting some of that cool weather in that region. Willie Greenway there in Georgia, hello, and Ryan seeing an active typhoon Pacific season. And Terry Haar, first day in Palacios, Texas. Haven't gotten rain in over 3 weeks there. So yeah, let's look at that forecast and see what's coming, because there's probably going to get a major weather system next week in much of the south central U.S. And let's go ahead and put it together here. Okay, the forecast GFS data. We'll go ahead and put that into motion there. There goes that very strong disturbance coming into Montana tomorrow, and then across North Dakota tomorrow afternoon. And then you can see a new one developing right there. So that's going to swing southward. Also, we've got this right here. And meanwhile, down in California, we've got this cutoff low about to come on shore. Okay, so it looks like that low there opens up very quickly for Thursday and Friday. Moves across the Rockies on Thursday, and then out into the Central Plains for Thursday evening. And then here comes the next trough. So this one will be coming again across much of the northern U.S. However, it looks like this one extends to the south a bit. So we may catch the tail end of that in Texas around the weekend. New trough coming together this weekend in California and Nevada, and you can see that this looks like a digging trough. A lot of energy on that backside there. So this will definitely park itself across the southern Rockies over the weekend, Sunday, Monday. And by the time we get up to Monday, yeah, this thing is really deep. So we've got this very deep southerly flow in Texas. May not mean a whole lot for severe weather because the flow in much of this region is likely to be unidirectional. In other words, near the surface, the winds will probably be out of the south to southeast. You go up a little bit higher and they're out of the south. You go up to jet stream level and they're still kind of out of the south. So you're going to get more or less splitting storms with that in MCSs, but we'll see. If we have winds very strongly backed at the surface, that could really change things. So we've still got a ways to go for that. Anyway, this very deep low digging on into the western half of the U.S. Things will be pretty active next week. And then we get towards the end of next week. Looks like things moderate a little bit, and then we've got a little bit of tropical action out in the Gulf. And I've got some other charts we can use to look at that. And just going to the very end, yeah, we get into this very progressive Pacific pattern towards the last half of October there. Okay, so let's zoom in and look at the precipitable water. And this is where we can see a little bit of that tropical action down south. And I'll just go ahead and run through this very quickly. You can see starting out, there's a lot of tropical moisture across much of the southeast U.S., all the way up to Iowa and Nebraska. See all that? That's an inch to an inch and a half of precipitable water. There's going to be a big change with that over the next 10 days. And here's where it starts. First, high-pressure system coming through the Dakotas. That's not only going to cool things, but dry things out quite a bit as we get into the end of this week. But it doesn't make very much progress southward. So we're going to keep that moist flow coming up through the weekend. Here comes round number 2. You can see there's not much bite behind that. And let's see, that moves about as far as Arkansas, southern Oklahoma. Probably a kind of a wet pattern there for Oklahoma and Arkansas. This is on Sunday. And let's see what the next bit of action is. Everything surges north. Very deep system coming together in Nebraska on Monday. There's what the fronts look like. Okay, so this is the next system coming together. This is being driven by a 1040 millibar high way up here in Alberta. So this has the potential to be pretty strong. Next weekend is going to be pretty interesting. And you can see it looks like the low-level jet is cranked up there. All right, this first baroclinic low heads northeast into Canada. So we're just going to get this kind of a slingshot of a cold front doing something like that right there. The impact of that will be mostly in the north half of the plains. Here comes the tropical system showing up there in the Gulf around Tuesday. And we've got a very deep flow of tropical air coming up from the Caribbean, so this could make landfall in Texas. And let's see, here's round 3 coming southward. And you can see this pushes well into Texas towards the end of next week. And it looks like maybe a southern system coming together there around Arkansas and Louisiana around Thursday or Friday, the 11th and 12th. The GFS decides to keep that system out in the Gulf, doesn't quite suck that up into the southern U.S. In fact, the cold air pushes all the way out into the Gulf, and it kind of drives that system outwards and towards Florida there. And look at that, it's like a big vacuum cleaner. All the moisture is gone. So very likely, yeah, around the middle of October, big cold blast coming in. And that'll really clear things out. We'll have some very nice evenings. So there goes what's that tropical system. And then we get to the end of the run there. That's the 18th. And we'll just take a quick look at the European model. And what I'm looking for here is anything going on out in the Gulf. And I don't think this goes out quite far enough. This only goes to Friday. No, that goes through all of next week. I guess it's not really picking up that tropical activity down in the Gulf there. So there's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I can see a little bit of troughiness out across the Bahamas and southern Florida, but no well-developed system like, for example, that hurricane that we've got out there right now. So that has a reflection in the upper levels, but what I'm saying is nothing is showing up down in this area over the next 1 to 2 weeks. So we'll just have to see about that. Definitely showing that troughiness across the Rockies and western U.S. So we're going to be seeing kind of an active week coming up next week. All right, well, that's about all I got for this evening. Just to take one last look at chat there. Ryan mentioning maybe the European model is picking up on that. But we shall see. There's still a long ways to go. And Tom's Weeful weather forecast for Rantoul, I think we're probably too late to get that. But anyway, I got to run. Have a good evening, and we will see you on Thursday.